jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
The show, fuck what you heard. I'm an artist, so you know I gotta perform. Put this drip drop on him, now he begging me for more. Good pussy, run the world. 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 Good pussy, run the world.
Came here for this smash, you ain't nothing average.
What happened? Fuck, being shy, good, it's all mine.
Got in the back seat. She nasty.
Lying on the dick like a dirty girl.
Ain't no telling if they ask me.
Get the money, so your heart. Still the show, fuck what you heard.
Had a dripping candy brain, long strokes, good brain.
Said this Pokemon on his dick.
She nasty. I'ma be good, right? Aight.
Welcome back, ladies and gents. Alrighty. And once again, my good old friend, MoneyBag Mia, is right here tonight.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
And we're just always back and forth talking about just awful trends that we're seeing on social media and everything, and it just drives us up the wall. So we just end up talking about it.
Yeah, and we also wanted to talk about some of the things that happen on social media, like slut-shaming, and, how it just could be really offensive for men, to talk about women and their bodies and kind of like try and judge people based off what they see. And I personally wanted to talk about it because I feel like it happens to a lot of people that I know. And it just also happens a lot, and it's like hard for me not to say stuff. And it kind of like, I feel like in some sort of instances, it kind of happens with me. Like, it could just be like jokingly comments that people don't think are offensive, but they're very like invasive comments,
And
like
they will just throw it out there towards like, whoa,
Yeah,
whoa,
they will.
dude. Just because that shock jock comedian says that doesn't mean it has to become your voice. And they're just like, whoa, I'm just joking. I'm like, well,
and
different
and
humor has
sometimes
different.
sometimes I'm sorry to cut you off. Sometimes like when a guy like sees something on social media, or they see a picture of you and they comment like, oh, what I would do to you if I was, around you, like that's also a form of shaming. And it's kind of like sexual harassment. So it's like, ladies, how do you feel when a guy like slides into your DM and says provocative things to you? Like, does that like turn you on or make you happy, or does that make you just instantly like turned off?
And it's hard to figure out who's like being legit feels that way, or if they're just a troll who's saying just bottom of the barrel, just bullshit. And
Well, how do you feel about it coming from a male's perspective?
I think it's out of line. And yeah, and while you could definitely make the case for harassment, it's just flat out just wrong. Like, you're disrupting society. And it, again, like we talked about before, there's many who just seem to think that because they're on the internet, you know, oh, it didn't technically come out of my mouth. I'm like, well, yes, it did. It's still conjured up in your brain, and you blurted it out in some form or another, you know. And I
Yes,
guess I don't know
I
why. It's just like, I mean, every other model, it seems like there's got to be just like some remark on, oh my God, your body. And it's just like, well, I mean, first of all, a simple, beautiful portrait would have just sufficed, you know? And just the lower you go, the more you definitely come off as a pig when you go there, you know, regardless of the
that's very
gender
true.
or the format. And I mean, I'm a guy. I have seen, you know, eventually when I run out of comedies or action or horror movies, eventually I'm going to get to some movie that has some sleazy content in it. And I would always, on just some kind of pornographic site, just always encounter just someone in the comments who's just saying just awful shit like, oh, that slut wants it. I'm like, dude, you're the one consuming this. You know, it's just like, and you're just acting like this adult film star is just a terrible person for doing just some form of sexual activity on screen. And it's like, oh my God, you know, don't make it personal. Don't go out of your way to attack someone or act like they're less of a person than you or anyone else, or just because they're in some form of risque entertainment. It's just like, you
That
don't
is
even know the
very
person.
well said. I really love how you worded that, because you know what? As we're talking about this, I just had a thought across my mind. Like, it might be a little, you know, racy and a little bit different for the ladies that are listening, but what about women who are, you know, sexually harassment as well? Because some women, they do see, you know, pictures of men or pictures of women, and they make, you know, outrageous sexual comments, but we don't speak on those things because it's like it's always the men getting caught. But what about the women that comment on guys with their shirts off and say, oh, what I would do to you if I was around you? Does it make it okay for us women to do those things if it's not okay for men? Ladies, you know, I would love to hear you
Yeah.
guys' opinion.
And it just doesn't ever make any sense, like, because at the end of the day, whoever's saying these awful remarks, it's like that not only have they compromised any form of a double standard, it's just kind of like, I mean, okay, so scenario one, let's say two guys are having a conversation about a woman they find attractive, you know, that's whatever, just keep that conversation private. The same thing with two gals. Oh my God, that guy's, you know, he's a hunk, you know, I want his number, you know. It's like, well, that's your own business, that's your own private conversation. But the minute you take any conversation out into the public, you know, it's like, well, why not approach it how you would if you were in college, if you were in a workplace, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
If it would be a social disruption there, so why would you want to make it be here on the internet as well for everyone to see? And I don't know why everyone just thinks that they can be kind of like a con man. They can just change their account number or take it down. It's like the minute it's out there, someone's already screenshotted it, you know?
That's very true.
It's going to be on TMZ or what have you. And like you're just saying earlier, it just seems like guys just assume that someone is lesser because even though they're consuming some kind of content that's over the top or explicit. And I don't know. It's just, I guess they just assume that someone is just inferior to them, and it's just very toxic. And it's the same thing with even guys who get victimized. Like, they don't ever want to speak up on it, and they just don't seem to realize that will eat you up if you don't speak, if you were harassed in some way, shape, or another. And you've seen a few scenarios play out in real life court cases where it's like they enjoyed it at the time, but then they realized they were taken advantage of, or the other way around, they were gropped, and then they're just like, wow, I got to quit my job, and I'm not going to say why I did, you know, because I was abused.
I think people are afraid to speak up because we're in a generation where it's normal to sexualize people, things, and objects. Like, social media is starting to become a platform where they are idolizing sex, and it's like a pornography just monetized in a way, so to speak, where you're not seeing complete sex, but you're seeing enough to wander. And I feel like the thing about it is when we sexualize things that are already sexual, it makes our hormones race. And then it also creates an image in our mind where we feel like we can engage into certain things and behavior with that person that we're, lusting over. So I feel
Right.
like when it comes to women and men, it's like it could be meaningless. Like sometimes it's just a feeling that overcomes a person when they see certain things, but then it
In the
also
moment.
could be, yeah, it could also be a form of harassment, because even if that is the case, you don't come off in a way where you are making someone feel uncomfortable. Like it's one thing to admire someone's content, but there's another thing to make them feel pressured. You know what I mean? Like just because a
Absolutely.
person looks beautiful, or just because they're doing, risque content, doesn't mean that you're able to, say, oh, I want to have sex with you, or oh, I want to share my fantasies, or I want to have things with you. Like you can't just insert yourself in someone's life because you like the things that you see or do or see them do. So it's like when it comes to that, I feel like people also, they shun women who are, sexually empowered in themselves and
They
really
definitely do.
confident.
They get on these bandwagons acting like, oh, you're a terrible person for doing this, even though I had all the power in the world to not watch whatever content I didn't care for that you were in. It's just like, it's
That's
kind of the
true.
same thing with violence. Like, for a while, violent movies used to be taboo, and everyone would act like, "Oh, you're clearly going to be a serial killer if you watch this." It's like, uh, I've watched Criminal Minds for years, and never have I ever wanted to become a serial killer.
I think that we secretly admire things that we shun people for. And I feel like if people can just start living in their truth and stop trying to shun people for things that they admire, like just embrace whatever it is that you feel, but just do it in a way where it's not slut shaming. Because at the end of the day, yeah, you may not like what you see, but you don't have to participate in what you
You
don't
don't
like,
have to watch it. Yeah,
you don't
and
have to watch the content, but when you constantly engage in something that you don't want to see or that you don't like, then it becomes like you become a predator and a stalker. So that all falls under harassment to me. So I feel like, when it comes to social media, everything is just so different. Like like I said, it's more of a place where sex is allowed, it's open, sexual risky content, it's like that's normal for people to see, but they're not doing it in a way where it's to, I guess, sexually arouse someone. They're kind of monetizing the sexual content as a form of making money. It becomes like a way to sell yourself for a product or a way to promote your business, and it's meant innocently, but people that are, just sexually invasive kind of take it as if it's like porn. And
they really do. And
and
half
even
the
if it is
time,
like half porn or not porn, or just someone being sexy and enjoying themselves, people should still be respected regardless of what type of content they're putting out.
totally. I mean, if you don't like that photo of someone, you can go to another photo that you do like. I mean, it's the same thing if you see a political stance that's in one of those photos, go to the photo that doesn't have whatever political statement you don't agree with. But yeah, I mean, let's say someone decided to be artistic. They photographed a male or female model in a business suit smoking a cigarette. And let's say you had a very, ultra religious, anti drug type person who saw that and was like, "Oh, how dare you, you're encouraging tobacco consumption," or some shit like that. It'd be like, no, but it seems like you say, trying to build on this point, it seems like the minute you put up a photo, there's just going to be so many different reactions, and you can only block so many idiotic people, to where it's just like, uh, you might want to actually just reflect on the actual photo. And a photo, like a painting, you're going to react differently to it regardless. But if you don't have anything constructive to, input, then why even bother to begin with? And so, yeah, if I see a risque photo of someone, I'm just going to either give it a thumbs up or not a thumb at all. I'm not going to, say a predatory statement like, "Oh, where do you live?" Oh, it's just like, my God. And it does seem like that does seem to happen with many boycotts or bandwagons. Someone has to look up everyone's private info so they can like throw eggs at their house. And it's just like, for real? It's like, you don't even know the person and you want to disrupt their life. What does it do? What does it even have to do with you? you complaintee. But it's just very frustrating, like you say.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
But more or less, yeah, it does seem like, I don't know why, but for a while it seemed like you would see a few people who were just joking around, and it was hard to tell if they were just being playful or flirting. And I think that's just been the dangerous line too. And it's like, well, why are you even flirting with someone you don't even know?
Yeah, that's true. I think that people, they're infatuated with strangers, and then COVID, people are not getting as much real life, interaction with people.
Not
So
mature.
people spend a lot of time on social media, like trying to engage and interact, and sometimes with everything just being kind of limited in the real world, people are trying to find everything on social media. Like they're trying to find girlfriends, hookup buddies,
Oh my god.
companionship, or just a friend, somebody to talk to. Like people use social media for a lot of different things besides what it's used for. Sometimes social media is just a place to post a funny video and laugh. Sometimes it's to promote a business, but now they're turning it into something that it really shouldn't be. Like it's becoming a way to harass people. It's becoming a way to bully people. It's becoming a way to make people feel like horrible about who they truly are. And I think that people on social media hide behind pages and hide behind insecurities and use that as a way to embrace things that they're not proud of. So they become a completely different person than who they truly are online than in person.
I totally concur. And I've even seen some photographers before who had like a beautiful person as their profile picture, and they would always have in the disclaimer, I'm a photographer, I'm not the model pictured, and no, you can't know the name of the person, because I know you're going to stalk them. So it seems like some people have had to kind of just put shields up.
Yeah, and also I feel like people on social media, they do use pictures of other people as profile photos to hide behind who they really are. Like people are not truly themselves. Like people that follow you from fake pages with no posts and a private account, like those are trolls. And I just feel like people like that have been following me lately, and then they try and like say things in my message request, which I don't ever check. But it's the fact that people really go out their way to make a fake page and kind of try and belittle you, and they really don't even know who you are. They're just going off of what you post. And I feel like people take social media way too personally. And I also feel like people in this day and age think that social media is like real life. Like social media is some of your real life, but it's not all of it. Like some intimate moments about yourself and some things about yourself, social media will never see. Social media just meant for a place to promote, have fun, and make money. It's not meant for you to put all of your life business. And I had to learn that the hard way, because I used to post my husband on my page. I used to be very vocal about my relationships, good and bad. So I feel like the
Mhm.
less you give people of your personal life, the better social media is for you. Because when people feel like they know your life on social media, they feel like they personally know you, and they can make, comments about situations and about you that they really know nothing about.
Absolutely. And it just keeps getting more and more complicated to where it's like, how did we even get here? You would have thought by now, again, it's just like, I think it just goes back to no one knows what discretion means anymore.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if I treat everything like I would if it were like a job interview, it's just like, it, what you need to know is what I'm going to tell you. What you don't need to know, I'm not going to even remotely bring up. Anyone asks me a personal question, instead of replying in public where everyone can see, I'll just private message them and say, please remove that remark. Or I'll remove that remark and say, please ask me, next time in private before you ask something like that. That's a little too personal, and I did not feel comfortable sharing that with the rest of the world. And I don't know. It seems like empathy has been worn out. No one's really thinking or giving it a second thought. They just think, oh, if you don't like it, you could have said something. I'm like, well, think about put yourself in other people's shoes. And it just seems to be impossible for many people. They just always like to be just too literal. Well, I'm not in your shoes. I'm like, well, try. Put yourself in the person's shoes. How would you react if so-and-so asked you this? And time and again, I have asked people that, and they've always given me a wise ass answer saying, well, I wouldn't be uncomfortable. I wouldn't have asked it to begin with if I thought it was terrible. I'm like, well, you're just clearly just not thinking straight, because what you asked is a very inappropriate question, and I need you to stop. It just seems like a lost cause sometimes. So I think that's the other thing too. And if you just can't solve it, just kick that person out, and even spread that message to other people saying, hey man, if you're my friend, stop interacting with that person, and or if you're friends with everybody, stop spreading around all these rumors and utter bullshit that I've already made pretty clear are really making me feel awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems like, again, just people aren't thinking twice. They just think, oh, what's the harm? It's just a question, or it's just a remark, or I thought he was
Yeah.
cute.
And then there's also like a lot of like sexualized predators in the modeling industry. Just work with people that you trust professionally so you don't have to feel uncomfortable each time you work with photographers, because all photographers are not sleazy and all photographers are not predators, but there are some that give you those signs where you would know before just working with them. Some predators, they come off real predatory before you meet them. So like they'll say something to you, and if you have a great intuition, you'll be like, okay, I'm not going to work. And always just have options. Like when you look for a photographer, don't be desperate. Find one that's professional and that's willing to make you comfortable and that works for you.
The minute they make any kind of inappropriate remark, treat it just like you would a film set. And I've walked off plenty of film sets where people weren't being paid, weren't signing paperwork, were being asked to do just dangerous stunts or something, or they just weren't making any use of time. And value your time. Absolutely value it. Put a number on it and just say, hey man, you have wasted my goddamn time. And it doesn't even have to be foul mouth, but it can just be flat out, hey man, you haven't done anything you've said you were going to do, and it's been 4 hours. You don't, call it for what it is. If you can tell that someone has had an unintended interruption and they're freezing, in slow motion, and they don't know how to win the towel, and just say, I think I can do better with this. Come back to me when you actually got an idea of what the hell you're doing. I think you hit on pretty much the main highlights, and I think you could even more or less state that just even if you just see just something messed up and it's not even related to you, just don't hesitate to just report it. They will reply if there's enough complaints. And I always just try to say something. Like I'll always go out of my way to just flat out if it's an offensive comment, I'll say something, regardless. And if I just think it's out of line, or if I keep seeing the same, even just spam bots who are just, stating the same, just overdone, fake t-shirt rip-off sites, or get a free credit card score report, just anything that's just off topic, I'm going to report it or state to the admin, hey, what the heck is going on?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Even if it's group admins talking with each other, I might even flag the comment if I just think it's out of bounds. Just because they're an admin doesn't mean I think it's necessarily appropriate what they're talking about. And the worst you can do is just not say anything.
Yeah, when you don't say something, it's almost like you're accepting certain things to happen. And then when you engage in it, even though you may be innocently just responding, it can give that other person on the end a different message because they're taking it like as if you want to do those things with them. Like when you respond, like if they're like, oh, hey, you have this nice
Even if you
body,
can't say anything,
or
just
you have a
report it.
nice butt, or something like that, like a sexualized comment made about you, or someone trying to date you because of a picture that you saw. You can either report it, block it, because speaking up is just a waste of time because they're too small-minded to understand what speaking up is even really all about.
Yeah, I mean, if I even just see two coworkers fighting in the parking lot, I might say something to the boss, for instance. And if they want to get angry, hey man, you snitched to the boss. We were having our own private discussion. And it's like, well, I don't care. I just saw something wrong and I just reported it to security,
That's true.
It didn't concern me, but at the same time, kind of did. Because if I'm seeing someone explode on someone or just flat out just lose their cool, what's to stop it from happening in the workplace? How do I know you're not going to be the same guy who takes out a baseball bat and slugs someone or pours hot coffee on someone?
That's very true.
I guess everyone just underestimates anger, or they just think, oh, everything has to be in a gray zone. It's like some stuff, the world may not be black and white, but truth be told, there is some stuff that is pretty crystal clear. And to just absolutely act like, oh, how dare you, I mean, I once had someone say, oh, you instigated a problem. It's just like, no, I reported a problem. And I don't know. It seems like everyone goes with the, oh, you snitch mentality. It's just like,
yeah,
if
but
something
I mean, if
bad is happening,
you have to report it. It's like people that involve themselves in that type of behavior just shows their character. Like people that are comfortable with letting women be slut shamed and harassed don't deserve to be on social media.
totally. And I don't know. It just seems like you would think by now that they know it's wrong, but they don't. And I mean, you can tell someone that they're wrong, and eventually they'll realize they won't have any friends in this world unless they find the most pettiest of the petty,
Yeah.
So yeah, it does get very old very quickly when you're having to tell someone, hey, nothing you're doing is okay here, so stop pretending it is.
That's very true.
I see some Facebook groups which will say, don't report our group to Facebook. It's like, well, no promises. If it's got inappropriate content, it's still got inappropriate content.
That's true.
And by that, I don't mean, oh, I disagree with the kind of content we're talking about. I'm meaning, hey, you said some hate speech, or you got a bunch of other guys who are just trying to name call each other.
That's very true. I think that should be talked about more. I think social media should be a place where people come together, collaborate, uplift one another. It's
Absolutely.
like people are so fixated on tearing other people down on social media, they're forgetting that they still have to live their own life and walk in their own path. Like social media isn't a competition. People make it a competition. It's like people are trying to figure out how they can overachieve over someone else, and that's not what it's about. It's about staying in your lane, doing what makes you happy, and being comfortable in the skin that you're in.
Totally. And sometimes it just seems like certain compliments just aren't even legit. It's like if you
I feel like people compliment you, and then it's also like a little shade.
Right. It's like you're using a big, heavy adjective or something that doesn't fit with the rest of that sentence, or I know for a fact you've never used that kind of grammar in your life. Someone else probably wrote it for you.
Yeah, that's really true.
People can tell when it's just coming from some kind of place. And
yeah,
even if you're struggling to come up with words, if they see your passion in your voice or somewhere in some other format, that can say a lot, as opposed to, well, I'm acting like this is an acceptance speech. It's just some people never learn. I have a boss, and he just only knows how to tell half-truths, like many bosses. They just feel like, oh, I got to put on multiple different faces, and it just doesn't line up, especially if you know the person. So it's just like, can you just like not yank something out of your ass just this once? Just this once. Can you just, simple handshake will do, pat on the shoulder saying, you got it. Thank you so much. That's all you need. As opposed to, you're doing so good. I had total faith in you. I knew you could, it's like, well, that's motivational, but do you really mean it? It's
exactly. It's like, you really mean that, or you just saying that?
You just would especially if you guys have known about each other but never once met, except at this mandatory conference call meeting or at this one event that you all happen to be doing a promotion or networking event at. And I'm sure you run into it at some of these other conventions. You've encountered some photographers or other models who you've met on social media, but you're now seeing in person, and you're like, well, you're over exaggerating again.
Yeah. It usually happens a lot to people that you feel that you're close with, not necessarily close with, but that you're around a lot, that seem to portray that behavior. It's always someone
Too
close
much.
to you that portray the shadiest behavior.
And it gets old very fast because, there was one guy who I kept encountering at a networking event, and he was always like, "Oh, by the way, that card's out of a date, and that's not my real phone number." It's like, well, then why did you bring that? And it's like, I don't know. They like to hear themselves talk, and I don't know. For me, that's just an extra no-no when you already get the not so sincere response, when it's just so overstaged. And it's like, I would even encounter it with acting friends. They could not break out a character. They wanted to be so playful and just on. To them, they thought they're being unpredictable and just amusing. And for me, I'm like, can you just I don't know. You don't have to be normal per se, but could you be some kind of consistency? And they just thought, I gotta keep being an actor even though there's no cameras rolling. It's just like, I don't play games, dude. I don't play that game.
Right.
And I don't know, I think, do you ever notice how there's a lot of people who like to get into even just grammar wars now? Like, I'm not even talking how the pronouns or everything else, but I'm meaning more just like people have a complaint and everyone wants to pretty much not bring anything to the discussion, but just make fun of, oh, how dare you have a typo. It's like, well, they had a typo. What's the harm? Did it harm anyone? I don't think it did. Unless it's just such bad grammar. It's all caps and it looks like a giant rant.
Yeah. I feel like people rant a lot. It's like people want to get into rants on social media verbally. Like, for instance, I've seen this video on, I think it was Instagram or TikTok, of this girl doing her husband's hair in a feminine way. Like, she did a half up, half down ponytail with baby hairs and stuff. And I was like, I just was like, that was weird. Like, why didn't you practice, your hair craft on a woman? Why would you do it to your husband? And then everybody just tried to chew me out in the comment section because they felt like what she was doing was okay. I'm like, if a guy can wear his hair as a woman, there's something wrong there. And I don't care about anyone's opinion about that. That's freaking weird.
Right.
I don't think any man should have their edges laid and be wearing feminine hairstyles. Like, he looked like a woman. She edged up his hair. It was like a half up, half down ponytail. I wish there was a way we can get the video on here, but I will send it to you personally. But it was just so crazy. And she was every video that she was posting was of him, of her doing his hair in a different style. I guess she's a hairstylist, and instead of doing actual clients' hair, she just does her husband's hair in feminine ways because he has long hair. And I just thought that was really weird. If you're a true hairstylist, you should have clients, or you should be able to do other people's hair outside of your husband. I understand like if it's a one-time thing, but don't post that on social media. Like, and the fact that he was comfortable with that, that just says a lot.
He might have just been doing it just because he thought it was amusing or something. But yeah, I think a lot of them are going by the whole any attention is good attention. I'm like, well, then you lose the right to react to any of what we're telling you if you're going to take that attitude. It's like, and I don't know, some people just seem to just want to explode on even their fans if they just hate just one single response. It's like, who are the other offenders? There's so many of them. Elon Musk, Chrissy Teigen. There's a bunch of them who are just big social media presences, and I really, I will admit, I don't respect anyone who wants to waste time with these pricks. I think they should just flat out just unsubscribe, block, block, block. Not give. The best thing you can do is make sure their subscriber base is like 100, just damage has already been done. It'll never go away. But the least you could do is just unsubscribe and block these people, don't give them a moment of the day. Don't even troll them, because they even lean into that as well. They are power hungry for just various interactions, and they want it all. They want any kind of ass kissing compliment or hostile comment, anything that, because half the time they will screenshot half the comments and blurt it out and censor out the commenter's face and then just put the comment up, and say, oh, look, someone really loves me, or, oh, can you believe the hate I'm getting? And it's like they use pretty much your comments as part of their marketing scheme to them. It's all about them. So I really don't get that either. It's just like, most you can do, instead of being mad at some random reality show host, just don't even pay them a visit. Don't even look at an article about them. They are just wanting to hang around other narcissistic people like themselves. And
Yeah, I feel like people with those personalities, they need to seek a little bit deeper help than whatever help it is that they're not getting. People who have complex personalities like that, it's really hard for them to adjust to normalcy, and that's a problem.
They never will be normal. But at the same time, I mean, we're basically damaging them all the more. We are just making them want to feed on this anyone can be a celebrity idea, and it's, why be part of the toxic culture?
I agree.
Do you have any people who you follow who you actually do kind of find pretty inspirational? Like, they'll pretty much just play it safe.
Yeah, I actually do have a few followers that I follow that post inspirational stuff that are just about their business, professional, and they just keep themselves involved in a point where it's productivity and it's positive. It's not like negative posting. It's really like serene and chill. So I do have some followers like that. And then I also have followers that post about, sex and, drama. And I just feel like, that's entertaining, but it doesn't keep my attention long. So it's like I've been trying to like kind of weed out my followers a little bit, but then also I just feel like I try not to pay attention to it. Like if I don't like something, I just won't pay attention to it. So I don't necessarily have to go out my way to track people down that's posting things I don't like. I just leave it alone.
Oh, totally. There was this one guy who just basically would just pretty much just make random offensive memes, and they're just always heated, and you just didn't know if he was just trying to piss off anyone just in general or just a particular group, like claim every guy is a toxic male, every gal complaining is a social justice warrior. And it was just like, see, that's beyond trolling, in my opinion. I think that's just, you want easy attention and you just want various people to either share this meme or some other bullshit. And like you say, it's not anything as simple as, hey, just be safe. If you're going to take a meme, why not take a meme that's at least clever, or maybe even an inspirational quote that's shared on one of those Facebook posts, just want to do that instead of, I'm going to come up with a random, not well thought out joke and then have it be about a very sensitive topic or just some random thing just because everyone's talking about it. I got to add my 2 cents. And I have seen some people even just kind of be a chicken shit on it, say, "Oh, I'm just sharing someone else's post." I'm like, well, clearly you agreed with some degree of it if you shared it.
Yeah, I feel like people things they just kind of try and be a little private about what they're agreeing to, and they try to be discreet. But we all know.
You're right. You blurt it out. You blurt it out. You might as well have actually said it.
That's true.
Seems like there are some fun ones out there. I mean, I don't particularly care for people who share photos of what they're eating, but I much prefer that over, just someone doing a random stunt that's probably going to get them killed on like a skateboard or.
Yeah, I don't like people that post dangerous things and think it's funny.
And they're like, "Oh, someone wants to be like me." I'm like, yeah. And that guy, that kid, or even that grown adult who's not particularly bright might just kill themselves just because they're imitating you.
That's true.
Anything for fans. I'm like, well, you got followers, but you got to be conscious of what you're putting out there and saying. I don't know. It's just everyone likes to obsess with themselves after a while.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are overly obsessed within themselves.
They really are. And I mean, even if the person, let's say there's some kind of celeb or even politician, even if it's a different moderator who's publishing their account, I mean, you can still put out a message to their page, just saying something instead of, just assuming they're constantly on there. Because there are times where it's like the comments don't match up with what was previously said, or there'll be an edit that'll say, "This is the admin of the page, we're closing down this topic because it got heated." And like, well, in all fairness, you're the original posters, so I don't know why you're complaining.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't get it. And yeah, it is good to just take a break from it. Don't be on the internet all day. There's plenty of times where I'm not editing the show or even necessarily walking around or eating. I'm actually just hanging with friends and family, and I'm talking, and I'm not even thinking to have my phone out like I was maybe a few years back where it was always on me. And even though I didn't want to look at it, I'd look at it anyway.
It's nice taking a break from social media. I don't think people should invest too much time into it all the time.
Right. Or, "Oh, I'm not getting enough likes, as many likes as I want." I'm like, that's fine. You probably won't for another while. It'll go in waves. Someone will like it 5 months later because they just now saw it.
Yeah, I feel like some people are really like overly obsessed with likes and views.
They want it now or never. And it's like, well, I mean, keep waiting.
I agree. I think that people are definitely overly obsessed with social media.
Oh. If there's any other upside, I guess it is just that, yes, it can be very lucrative to some people, but I mean, everyone in general just needs to have a backup plan instead of acting like there's only one thing for their bread and butter, let alone their persona. Don't be married to the work and at the same time love what you do. But again, I mean, I really don't even understand others who just know that everyone reacts different on a different day.
Yeah. It's kind of all depending on the situation, sometimes people can be really invasive and sometimes people can be really cool. I think that people online are really complex with their personality. I think sometimes people they say angry things and they come off in a certain way, but that's not really who they are. I think it's like sometimes people say things in the moment and people take a lot of frustration out online nowadays. So it's like you can't really tell if they're just a troll or if they're just having a bad day. That's why you kind of got to take things with a grain of salt online. Don't take nothing personally that anybody says to you, because behind your phone, you're in your comfortable place. That's why it's really important to not post like certain things like about yourself that's intimate, like where you live or outside your door. Try to keep yourself private, because sometimes when you do get into encounters online, some people might try to actually find you, and we don't want that. So sometimes
Yeah. Don't invite it.
you got to kind of keep yourself private, because you don't really know who people are. Sometimes people may ask like what city you're in or where you're from. Those are just like leading questions to try to kind of figure out where you are, and it's like that's not
Anything
conversation.
that puts you on the spot is already a red light. It's like, well,
Yeah, anytime anyone asks you those questions, you really shouldn't entertain it, because why would a complete stranger want to know where you live? You have to really think about those things.
oh yeah, there's just
Meet up with
snobs.
anybody.
There's even people who do the whole, oh well, how did you make that? It's just like, how did you create that? Oh, that's unprofessional. And it never failed. Every time there's someone who had to go there, and it was just like, seriously, dude. I mean, if I told you it was created this way or done this way, would you react any differently? It's just like, come on. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, I feel like now we just have to really protect ourselves as women, especially if we live alone or have children. It's like always protect yourself, and just be aware of the type of people that follow you. And whenever you feel unsafe or you feel someone is harassing you or threatening you, just be sure to block them.
Please do. Just don't put up with it.
There's a lot of women that's been stalked and harassed and even killed by someone, stalking and kind of lusting and infatuated with someone online, to the point where they will go out their way to try and find them. Some men do get like that. They get so infatuated, and especially in Instagram models that post like a lot of beautiful photos and racy things. Those are the ones that they actually target the most.
Totally. Well, thank you ever so much for another meaningful chat.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great to be here. I love being on the podcast and sharing my opinions, and I look forward to doing more sessions with you.
Solely up. Be sure to follow Promiscuous Lips.
And the Real MoneyBag Mia. That's 3 A's, THAAA, Real MoneyBag Mia.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was.
How
be a
did you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zamenhof. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zamenhof, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zamenhof, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zamenhof.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? And that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.